Although the days of Muharram and the days of Safar are over, it doesn't mean that the mourning period for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam has entirely finished. And today I'll talk about the legacy and the memory and the lessons from the 11th Imam of the Shia, Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. The Imam was born in Medina, and his mother was an important figure in his upbringing and in the way in which the Imam was raised. His mother was called Sawsan, and she was one of the most competent and virtuous women who was around in that time, not just in the city, but in the entire Islamic Ummah. And she took a lot of care in the way that she raised her son, in a way in which he would truly be deserving of. And she took great care in the way in which she raised him, because she knew that this was going to be a special child who would be befitting of the position of Imam. And this pious lady accompanied Imam al-Askari to Samarra, and she also passed away there. She travelled to the city of Samarra to be with her son and to support him in his life. And as I mentioned, she was a very pious, modest woman, and she was known in the community and the circles to be a very humble and pious, good woman. And Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam says about her that this woman, Sawsan, is free from every single evil in this planet. She is free from all indecency, uncleanliness and impurities. This shows the status of this woman for Imam al-Hadi to praise her in such a way. During his 6 years of the position of Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam spent 3 of these years in prison. Therefore, for half of the time he was the Imam of the Shia, he was spending his life in the prison. And the person who jailed him, Salih bin Wasif, put 2 guards to look after him and to watch over him constantly, 24/7, so that he could persecute him, so that he could oppress him as much as possible. However, these 2 guards, whenever they would look closely at the state of the Imam and the way in which he had manners and the way in which he conducted his life in prison, when they saw the way the Imam would do all of this, they were so impressed by him. They were taken aback by how such a person who was persecuted so much could have so much faith and so much candor in the face of this oppression and his loyalty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when they saw this, they began to respect him and they began to treat him in less of an oppressive manner, in a more peaceful and decent way. And when they were asked about the state of the Imam and in what position he was in, the guards used to tell people that he would fast during the day and he would be engaged in prayers, he would be engaged in making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all through the night up until the dawn, and he wouldn't spend this time doing anything other than this. He wouldn't speak to other people, he would be committed solely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Ubaydullah Haqqani, who was the officer to the Abbasid ruler at the time, he was a very arrogant man. And with all of his arrogance, no matter how much pride he felt in his heart, he would always raise out of his position and he would stand whenever he met Imam Hassan al-Askari, and he would offer him his own seat to sit on. This is the ruler, and this is one of the people who is committing the acts of oppression to the Imam. Yet he knows the position of the Imam. He knows the status of how amazing this man is, so much so that he would rise whenever in his presence and even offer him his seat. Knowing in his heart he was doing something wrong by oppressing the Imam, but at least recognizing that this was the legitimate Imam. And he would always say that he never saw anybody like Imam Hassan al-Askari when he was in Samarra. And he declared that the Imam was the most pious and knowledgeable man of all time, the most knowledgeable man he knew, yet he still continued to oppress him. This shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides those whose hearts are truly with it. This man recognized that Imam al-Askari was the most knowledgeable man at the time. He knew that he was the Imam. He knew that he was the rightful successor from the previous Imams and one of the successors of Rasulullah, yet he continued in his persecution of him. Now, after the death of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, the majority of the followers of the Imam recognized that his son Hassan al-Askari would be the next Imam of the Shia. However, the Imam's contact with the followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam was very heavily restricted by the evil rulers and the different caliphs that came at the time, one after the other. They would try and restrict the Imam from having any contact with his followers, with the Shi'as of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and instead he was forced to communicate to them in a different way. And And he would communicate with his followers through different representatives, different people who would represent him. And as I mentioned, he was under intense control by the caliphs that would come and would reign over him from these empires. And he wasn't allowed to meet with people frequently. He wasn't allowed to go and tell people that this is what you should do in the time where I'm in prison, and this is what I command you to do and order you to do. He couldn't say this face to face. The only people he would rarely get the chance to meet would be his close associates and his representatives. And he realized that the way that these caliphs were not allowing him to meet anyone and give them advice was because they sensed that the imamah of Imam al-Mahdi was soon to be approaching, and they did not want the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen to be put in the best position and the best state possible for when Imam al-Mahdi was given the position of Imam. Now, people had begun to become accustomed to it. They began to realize that this is going to be the norm, that they must get all of their directions from the Imam through a series of devoted companions who would be his representatives. And this is a lesson for us, that when the Imam would appoint people to represent him and the true teachings of Islam that Rasulullah had put forward, he put them in a position of authority. He entrusted these people who were not ma'soom to represent his message. If we want to break it down even further, the ma'soom Imam cannot be in the position to give direct advice to the people. So he appoints others to give his message out. And this is a message for us that we can hold on to from Imam al-Askari. When Imam al-Mahdi, the successor of Imam al-Askari, appoints representatives, meaning the ulama, today, then we must hold on to them, because what they are representing is the message of the awaited 12th Imam. Now, Imam Hassan al-Askari only lived for 29 years. He was only blessed to be on this planet for 29 years. But during those 6 years where he was the Imam, he left behind very significant works of the Holy Quran. He left behind different interpretations of Islamic matters, of legal rulings, and he also left a lot of clarification on the matters of fiqh. And he also directed, from his prison cell, the revolutionary movements of Shi'as around the region at the time, who would come from far distances to try and meet him and to try and get guidance. He would direct them on how to engage in their revolutionary behaviours, on how to hold on to Islam whilst challenging oppression. In the time of the 11th Imam's leadership, the teachings of the Holy Quran and the theological disputes that people had amongst the Muslims received a particular scholarly movement. He began to introduce his own method of dealing with these disputes. And similarly as well, the culture from the Shi'as, which was already well known in other fields, such as philosophy, such as in chemistry, such as theology as well, it presented a lot of great figures who were the students and the companions of Imam al-Askari, who were able to benefit from his wisdom. Today obviously marks the anniversary of the martyrdom of Imam al-Askari. It's reported to be on a Friday, on the 8th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Ubaydullah bin Haqqan's son, who we mentioned earlier on, his son said that one day my father was informed that Ibn al-Rida, meaning Imam Hassan al-Askari, had fallen sick, he'd become unwell. And upon hearing this, he says, my father went and rushed to the Imam, to the Caliph, to tell him the news that the Imam is very unwell and he is sick. This Caliph, this evil, oppressive Caliph, then sent 5 of his trustees, 5 of his closest associates, along with him. And he ordered them to keep the Imam under constant watch and to keep him under constant observation and to let this Caliph know if anything was happening around the Imam that he should know about. And what the Caliph also did was he appointed a doctor to go and to look after the Imam and to report on all of the symptoms which he was feeling. And after 2 days, they began hearing from this doctor that the Imam's health is getting worse and it is deteriorating, and that he's become so weak that it has overwhelmed him and he has no strength left in him. So early in the morning, this Caliph personally goes to visit Imam Hassan al-Askari. And he ordered the doctors who he had brought with him, who were mostly Christian and Jewish doctors, not to leave the Imam, to keep him as I mentioned, under the constant observation of him. And he also brought the supreme judge at that time in the caliphate, and he said, bring me 10 of the most well-known scholars and ulama, and bring them to remain constantly in the company of Imam al-Askari. Now, you might think, this caliph has oppressed the Imam all throughout his life. He has oppressed him during his period of Imam. So why is he then sending doctors? Why is he sending people to watch over the Imam and to take care of him? Why is he sending scholars to give the blessings from them to the Imam? And the reason for this was very sly. He used deception to try and fool the masses. He tried to convince people that he was someone who he had given the poison to the Imam. He was trying to conceal the fact that it was on his orders that the Imam had become sick through the poison which he had ordered to be administered to him. And he tried to make it seem as though the death of the Imam was something due to a natural sickness and that the Imam was going to die a natural death. In reality, the opposite was the case. He was using deception to try and free himself of the guilt of killing the Imam. And these people that the Caliph had ordered to be in his house stayed around until the oppressed Imam gave up his body and he returned to the abode of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the young age of 29, not a few years older than me. And after this, the evil Caliph, who had administered the poison to the Imam and then pretended as though the Imam had died a natural death, he launched a campaign for the son of Imam Hassan al-Askari, having heard that his son would be the one who would one day dominate the entire world and overthrow all of the wrongdoers, overthrow all of the people who promoted falsehood and oppression. And he continued searching for this son for over 2 years until he gave up. Abu al-Adyan says, I was once at the service of Imam Hassan al-Askari, and I used to deliver all of his letters to different cities. When the Imam wanted to write letters to people, this would be the man who would go and deliver them because he trusted him. And on his deathbed, one day, the Imam called to Abu al-Adyan, and he says, take these letters, I'll need you to deliver these. And then he says, you will only return to Samarra to hear wails, to hear crying, to hear lamentations, sorrow, grief from people from my house. And that is the time period where my body will be given the ghusl after death. And this companion says to the Imam, my master, when this event occurs and when I hear the people crying out in pain and sorrow for your death, who should the Imam be given to? Who should be the Imam after you? And the Imam said, whoever demands from you the reply to my letter. And Abu Adyan says, okay, please give me another sign because anyone can do this. The Imam says, the person who will be the Imam after me is the person who performs the janazah, the funeral prayer, over my body. Abu al-Adyan says, this is still not enough. Someone might come and do the funeral prayer and he's not supposed to be the right successor. Give me another sign. So the Imam responded to him again. He says, the one who can tell you what is in this bag I have given you, no one else knows about it. Someone will come up to you and he will tell you what is in this bag, and this will be the successor and the Imam after me. So Abu al-Adyan goes and he sets off to deliver the letters. And in 15 days he returns. And he returns to the Imam's house and he hears the people crying and he hears the people wailing from inside the house. So he goes inside and he sees Ja'far al-Kadhab, the Imam's brother, who was sitting down. And he saw a bunch of other people who were expressing their condolences after the Imam's death. And they were also congratulating Ja'far al-Kadhab on his appointment to become the Imam. Abu al-Adyan says he was very surprised by this. So he approached him and he congratulated him. And he offered his condolences as well for the death of Imam al-Askari. And he says that Ja'far al-Kadhab didn't say anything. He didn't react in any special way. And he didn't ask anything from Abu al-Adyan. Remember, Imam al-Askari says that my successor will do these multiple things and he will tell me what is in this bag, etc. Ja'far al-Kadhab doesn't say anything. The body of Imam al-Askari then gets shrouded and they prepare it for the janazah, for the funeral prayer. And some man comes in and he says to Ja'far al-Kadhab, go and perform the funeral prayer over the body of the Imam. Abu al-Adyan is thinking, okay, maybe this is one of the signs, he's going to go and read the janazah. But when Ja'far al-Kadhab stood up to go and read it, a child stands up and he goes towards him and he tugged on the robe of Ja'far Kadhab. And he says, Ammo, step aside. I am more ready and I am more able to lead the funeral prayer rather than you. This is embarrassing for Ja'far Kadhab. A child is coming up and saying, I am more qualified to lead the salah over the imam than you are. Abu al-Adyan then says that this child then looked at him and he said, can you please give me these answers to the letter which was written by Imam al-Askari, and can you also give me the letter which is written in that bag which the Imam has promised to me? Therefore, the conclusion was reached that this young boy, this child, is the successor and the next Imam after Imam al-Askari. The reason for this? Because he fulfilled every one of the tick boxes that Imam al-Askari demanded must be met for this person to be the next Imam. Lastly, quickly, I will talk about the advice that Imam al-Askari gave to his Shia. He didn't leave this world without giving us no advice. And he gave us advice on how to reach the level which he expects from us. He said before he was martyred, I recommend you to have fear of Allah Azza wa Jal. Be pious in your religion. Don't show off and have a fake image of your religion. Strive for the sake of Allah. Be truthful when you speak to people. Don't lie. Give deposits, give something which you have borrowed back to the people who you borrowed it from, whether that person be a good person or an evil person. He says, increase the amount of time you spend in sujood in your prayer, and be good to the people around you, be good to your neighbours. He says, with all of these things that you do, you will be on the path of Muhammadan Islam. He says, by these principles, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came and was successful with his mission, just with these few qualities. He says, associate with your family, attend the funerals of people, visit the sick people, the ill people, and carry out their rites. Because if someone is pious in their religion, and he is truthful when he speaks, and he treats people with kindness, then it shall be said about him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is a true Shia, and this shall please him, and this shall please the Imam as well. The last piece of advice he says is to mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala excessively. And remember the concept of death. Don't think that you will be alive in this dunya forever and that you will have no challenges and that your life will be long, because death can approach you at any time. He says, recite the Quran, read the Quran, and send the peace and blessings on the Holy Prophet, because the sending of salawat, the sending of blessings on the Holy Prophet, each time has 10 good deeds associated with it. And he says, keep in mind, this is what I have recommended to you to do. And so on the Martyrdom anniversary of Imam al-Askari, it's important that we also follow through with this advice. And to finish, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant victory to the mu'mineen and the mazlumeen and for all the shuhada, especially in Gaza and in Palestine. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.